The first time I heard the crack, it wasn't wood. It was my heart, a splintering sound that ricocheted off the oaks and lodged somewhere behind my ribs, the kind of noise that wakes you at 3 a.m. years later and makes you sit bolt upright in bed. I'm Jack Harlan, 65, 40 years of pouring concrete and welding steel so commuters could shave 7 minutes off their drive. The red flag dangled like a broken finger, the post snapped clean at the base, and the concrete footing I'd mixed with my own hands, 2 bags of Quikrete and a prayer, lay cracked open like an eggshell. My wife Ellen, the woman who still calls me Captain when I burn the toast, stood barefoot on the gravel in her faded University of Colorado hoodie, hand pressed to her mouth. Just bored teenagers, but the tire tracks told a different story, deep, deliberate, the kind left by a vehicle that cost more than my first house. We'd sunk everything into Harlan Haven. 3 acres of rolling hillside kissed by morning mist, ancient bur oaks older than the state constitution, a barn with a tin roof that sang in the rain, and a porch swing where Ellen and I planned boundaries for covenant purposes. We were too drunk on the wildflower meadow and the way the creek babbled behind the barn to care. That line had teeth, and its name was HOA President Marlene Voss. Mid-60s, drives a pearl-white Cadillac Escalade that purrs like a panther, wears tennis visors indoors, and a smile sharp enough to shave with. She cornered us at the welcome barbecue. The one with store-bought brownies and forced small talk, holding a single sad cookie on a paper plate like it was a bribe. Such a charming older parcel, she cooed, eyes cataloging every peeling. Contractor tried to cut corners on rebar spacing. I built the second mailbox the way I built the I-70 overpass outside Grand Junction. Overspec'd, overloved, every measurement triple-checked with. A carpenter's level older than my marriage. I dug the hole 2 feet deep, mixed the concrete with a garden hoe until my shoulders burned, set the 4x4 post plumb and true, then stood back to admire it the way a father admires his kid's first bike. I even stained it chestnut brown to match the porch rails Ellen had sanded by hand the summer Grace left for Boulder, her duffel bag stuffed with dreams and ramen. 2 nights later, a cream envelope slid through our mail slot like a scalpel. Oak Ridge Meadows Architectural Compliance Committee embossed in gold foil, citing CCNR Article 7. The color of every soul-crushing cubicle I'd ever escaped. Ellen kissed my cheek, said, "Pick your battles, Captain." So I drove to Miller's Paint and Hardware, bought the quart of sandstone beige. That cost more than the post itself, spent a Saturday morning on my knees brushing humiliation into every grain, the sun baking the shame into my neck like a brand. I photographed the finished. The concrete still curing when we left for the farmer's market. Tuesday, we came home with arms full of peaches for the cobbler Ellen makes when the world feels too sharp, and there it was, louder than a fire alarm. I knelt in the dirt, heart hammering like a jackhammer on overtime, because that paint matched Marlene's Escalade the way a bullet matches a gun. Ellen's hand found mine. The kind deer hunters used to catch bucks in velvet, strapped it to the ancient bur oak across the street that technically sat on common area, camouflaged it with Spanish moss and gilt. The kind of guilt that comes from spying on your own street. The 4th mailbox went up, beige and perfect, the concrete footing deeper this time, 3 bags of Quikrete, and a silent vow. I waited. The way I used to wait for stress tests on bridges that carried school buses full of kids who looked like Grace at 12. The footage came at 2:47 a.m., infrared turning the world ghostly. The Escalade gliding like a great white shark, slowing, then veering, the passenger tire lifting as it crushed my mailbox with the casual violence of someone stepping on an anthill. The driver's face was shadow, but the license plate glinted clear, Voss 1. I saved the clip to a thumb drive, bagged the paint chip in a Ziploc like evidence from a crime scene, felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not anger anymore, but resolve, the kind that builds dams against floods, the kind that says not my family, not my home, not today. The Oak Ridge Meadows community center smelled of burnt Folgers and fear, folding chairs squeaking under neighbors who'd never waved, but now stared like we were the season finale of their favorite true crime podcast. Marlene sat at the head table flanked by Vice President Carla Dunn, eyebrows permanently arched in surprise like she'd just seen the price of Botox, and Treasurer Lloyd Pierce, eyes half closed like He was meditating on his 401k, or maybe just asleep. I waited through 20 minutes of debate about whether garden gnomes could exceed 12 inches, then stood, voice steady as the rebar I used to. Weld, I have evidence of felony vandalism and targeted harassment, laying out the timeline like a project schedule, the costs itemized to the penny, the paint chip in a plastic evidence bag. Then cueing the video on my laptop. The room went still as the Escalade crushed my mailbox in grainy glory, the crunch audible over the hum of the AC. Marlene didn't blink. Could be any white SUV. Lloyd mumbled about inconclusive footage, lighting issues. Carla nodded like a dashboard bobblehead on a dirt road. They dismissed me with the same smile surgeons give before they say we did everything we could. 2 days later, certified mail, return receipt requested. $500 fine for failure to maintain property in good repair, citing the pulverized third mailbox. $250 for unauthorized surveillance device on common area. The oak tree now apparently HOA sovereign territory. The paper trembled in my hands, not from rage but from the injustice of it, the way Marlene had turned my defense into offense, my evidence into ammunition against me, the way she'd smiled while twisting the knife. Ellen found me in the garage at midnight, blueprints spread like autopsy photos. Coffee cold beside a half-eaten peach, and she didn't argue, just rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Whatever you build next, make it for us, not for her. Make it something Grace would be." I laughed, a sound that scared the dog, because the battlefield had shifted under her feet, and she didn't even know, because I'd been fighting on her chessboard when the real game was being played on. Through Coke bottle glasses, whistled low enough to rattle the windows. "She's been ticketing you for land she's supposed to mow. Jack, that's richer than the coffee at Starbucks." He staked the easement. "We're not defending anymore," she said, voice crisp as fall apples. "We're billing. We're suing. We're making them choke on their own fine print." The invoice was a masterpiece. $1. $478 in mailboxes, $312 in paint and concrete, $1,200 in labor at contractor rates, $300 in trail camera and SD cards, total $3,290, stamped 30 days past due. Notice of intent to lien. Vanessa mailed it certified, return receipt, the kind of mail that makes bureaucrats sweat. The new mailbox, Project Titan, was engineered like a battleship in a landlocked county. My old crew buddy, Rusty Malone, now owner of Ironclad Fabrication, welded quarter-inch AR 500 plate steel into an angled prow that would kiss a bumper and send the energy straight into a 4-foot concrete anchor. Access point, approved in 72 hours with a satisfying KA chunk from the clerk's stamp. We planted pyracantha around the base, thorns sharp as regret, berries red as Marlene's face would soon be. Marlene's countermove was social media scorched earth, a Oak Ridge Meadows Facebook post dripping fake tears and all caps. Neighbor threatening lawsuit. Dues will rise to cover legal fees. Times asterisk because the shade was too cheerful. Another wrote, "Jack and Ellen brought us cookies when my wife had surgery. This feels personal." The neighborhood cracked open like an egg. Smelled like wet earth and victory. Whitaker in his surveyor vest looking like Moses parting the red tape sea with a transit level. Neighbors gathered in bathrobes and curiosity, phones out like, "Phone already recording." "This is vandalism," she shrieked, voice climbing octaves usually reserved for opera divas. "I forbid this. You're all being sued." Rusty sipped coffee from a Yeti the size of a small bucket, deadpan. "Lady, I wouldn't weld a doghouse for you if you paid in gold bars and threw in a lifetime supply of brisket." She called the sheriff, finger-stabbing 911 like it owed her money. 2 cruisers arrived at 8:29, Deputy Ramirez and Deputy Kim, boots crunching gravel, faces unreadable under the brims of their Stetsons. I handed over the folder, permits, plat. Vanessa's card with her cell highlighted in neon yellow. Ramirez read, eyebrows climbing like ivy on a trellis, then walked to Marlene, who stood with arms crossed, smug as a cat with cream. "Ma'am," he said, voice calm but firm as bedrock, "this is a permitted utility installation on registered easement land. HOA rules do not apply. Step back or face obstruction charges under CRS 18-8-609. Her face cycled red to purple to ghost white. The neighborhood watching her crown slip sideways. She sputtered, "But I'm the president." Kim didn't blink. "Not of the county, ma'am." She fled without a word, tires spitting gravel like curses, the Escalade fishtailing down the street like a teenager who'd just failed driver's ed. Titan rose like a middle finger to tyranny. The crane lifting the steel beast into place, concrete pouring thick and slow, the smell of wet rebar and possibility thick in the air. Neighbors clapped when the brass survey cap was set. Invoice, red stamped past due, lien pending. Second, drone photos of Marlene's 6-foot vinyl fence violating CCNR Article 12, Section 4, maximum height 48 inches. Third, recall petition, 1 inch and a model for rural security. Marlene's gavel froze mid-air, mouth open like a fish on dry land. A neighbor in the back, Mr. Patel, who'd fought gnome height limits for 3 years, shouted. New board, led by Mr. Patel and Mrs. Alvarez, who'd once been fined for a pink flamingo, cut us a check for $3,290 at the next meeting, apologized on behalf of the community, fired Premier Property Management. The vultures who'd enforced Marlene's reign used the $180,000 surplus to build a playground with real wood chips and a zip line the kids named Titan's Revenge. Titan stands sentinel. Dings from curious kids tapping for luck, a landmark for directions. Turn left at the mailbox that ate in Escalade and spit out justice. Ellen and I sit on the porch at dusk, fireflies blinking. Like tiny victories, the scent of peach cobbler drifting from the kitchen where Grace FaceTimed from med school to say she's coming home for the playground dedication, her white coat already too big for her shoulders. We started homeowner liberty workshops, free twice a year at the Douglas County Library, plat maps and coffee, teaching folks how to read the fine print that can save their sanity. The neighborhood breathes, and our slice of heaven is ours again. Porch swing creaking under Ellen's head on my shoulder, the creek babbling behind the barn like it's telling the Oaks what happened. Grace sends photos from campus. Her study group gathered around a laptop watching the viral video of Marlene's meltdown, captioned asterisk, my dad, the legend. Asterisk. But lean in, smell the pyracantha and the fresh-cut grass. Feel the weight of the brass survey cap under your palm, and ask yourself, when a rulebook becomes a weapon sharper than any tire iron, when a paint chip can cost thousands in pastel polos and pearl earrings, if a mailbox can spark a revolution that topples a tyrant and builds a playground, what's stopping them from measuring your shutters, your flowers, or just another line item on someone else's spreadsheet? Another trophy for a Karen who never learned that power without accountability is just bullying with better landscaping. The sun dips behind the Oaks, painting Harlan Haven gold, the playground laughter echoing like freedom, and I head inside to the life we fought for. But the question hangs in the air like evening mist, waiting for your voice, waiting for the next Titan to rise.